What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Travis Ballinghoff, and today I got an interview for you. So for the people who have been subscribed for a while, you probably know I recently teamed up with the Flyers High and Wide podcast, and on Wednesday night we interviewed Dennis Bernstein. Now, Dennis has been covering the LA Kings for a long time. He's also he's kind of like the sidekick over at the fourth period with David Pagnotta. They got eyes and ears on everything. So in this interview, we talked Kings, we talked Flyers, we talked Bruins, we talked Patrick Kane, Jakob Chychrun, Provorov, Kevin Hayes. We covered it all. In the description, I'm going to link the full episode to the podcast. Please leave a like and subscribe on their channel over at High and Wide. But also do the same here. It'll help me grow. It'll help me keep posting content for you guys. All right. Hope you enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Dennis Bernstein of the fourth period. Dennis, DB, thanks for hanging out. How are you?
Hey, James. Well, thankfully, I'm the one and only. There can't be more than one with me. So
no, there's definitely not.
To save everybody. But great to be on with you on Flyers High and Wide. So happy to talk trade deadline because we even got trades today. So let's get to it.
Yeah, how about that? Arizona traded a defenseman, huh? And it wasn't Jakob Chychrun.
Exactly. Jakob Chychrun's probably tapping Bill Armstrong on his shoulder saying, let's go. And then Zaitsev going to Chicago here late in the afternoon for a great move by Chicago, getting defenseman to take on that contract in the second and the fourth as well. So things are starting to percolate a little bit. You know, not everything's going to go down to March 3rd, but two interesting moves. And look, every time you get to a trade deadline, you're always talking about defense. It's always a commodity teams are looking for. Here's evidence of two today. And so we still have Gavrikov. We've got Chychrun out there. So it's going to be busy up until the third. I'm not sure there's going to be big deals on the third because the trend right now is the high-value players like a Horvat, like an O'Reilly. You want that guy on the team as soon as possible. So once the price is met, there's not a lot of negotiation. These guys have jumped on with their new teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that Ottawa trade was interesting. Are they – obviously they're clearing cap, but – do you have any idea for what? Or is it just to maybe sign DeBrincat, or are they going to make a play for a defenseman here?
Yeah, they've been looking for a right defenseman for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And Dorian was in LA a couple weeks ago, and the Kings have a surplus of right defensemen. So that's the move. What player it is, not sure. But yeah, and they have to – I assume when you trade for DeBrincat, you're going to re-sign him, right? So yeah, they need money for DeBrincat, and they need for some other acquisitions. And that team is not far away. I know some people had picked Ottawa to make the playoffs this year, and I looked at their blue line, looked at their goaltending, saying not quite yet. But Stutzle's been great. G is great. He's very happy in Ottawa playing there. So they're a team on the rise, and I think what the issue is with this team as well is that they won't add right now because what's happening? The team's going to get sold. And when you hear $1 billion for the Ottawa Senators, wow, okay. I guess business isn't that bad in the NHL. So I don't suspect like a big move for Ottawa right now. They want to get past the new ownership situation. Once they do, and I assume that happens by the offseason, you look to them to add, and maybe significantly, because they're a team that's on the rise.
Absolutely. And so obviously we're Flyers podcast.
Yep.
We have questions about some of the Flyers players. If you've heard anything on, I mean, it seems like the Flyers have been sellers for the last however many years now at the deadline. Have you heard anything on a player like JVR? Do any teams out west have an eye on JVR?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and here's the thing. There might be even an East team, James, because you know who started on left wing for the Islanders on the top line tonight? Matt Martin. And so the Barzal injury is big, right? And they have kids like, Holmstrom and Hutchin Fashing. So as a depth player, because the Islanders are not a speed team, right? So could JVR fit their style of play and give them goals down the stretch? Yeah, I'm not sure what they do at this point because they're kind of teetering here. They actually might be sellers if they don't win tonight against Winnipeg and lose the next couple of games. I think a team like Minnesota, what blocks JVR going from Minnesota is that now they're interested in Brock Besser, where I think if you're going to make a trade, it would be Brock Besser. The other issue is that both with JVR and Kevin Hayes, and then a team like Calgary. And then you had the kid Jacob Pelletier, who sort of made fun of and didn't know what his number was in the lineup a couple of weeks ago. Jacob is on the top 6 right now. So JVR could fit in Calgary and Dallas. The assumption in Dallas is Patrick Kane, right? Because he's a right side player. They need help on the right side. But if that falls through and it's too pricey, JVR could be an option. But like with Kevin Hayes, you're going to have to retain. Like Kevin Hayes at $5 million, would he help Carolina or Colorado? Sure would. And so that's the challenge. That's the challenge for Fletch right now is you're going to have to make deals. You're going to have to make it. You have to sweeten it by retaining and probably adding to it. But there are, I think those two guys, because they bring offense, the defense, I think the defense is off-season trades. Either Pro or Sanheim, who was healthy, scratched the last game, which is no big deal. But I think that's what you look at. So if you're looking for trades for the Flyers to make right now, I know that you mentioned maybe a Sealer or a Braun. To me, that's like a March 3rd deal for like a 5th-round pick.
Yeah.
Like it's not right now. On championship teams, those guys, even though they're affordable, they're insurance policies. They're not difference makers. Where, look, if you put Hayes on one of those two teams I just mentioned, he could be a difference maker because the one thing Colorado, and I know they've been hurt all year, and now McCarr's out again, and there's some doubt about them, but they never replaced Nas Kadri. Like JT Comfort's not the guy. Alex Newhook's not the guy. So even if they were fully healthy, they're not as good as last year. The one benefit for Colorado is that the West isn't that strong. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Flyers do right now up to March 3rd. And I don't know how patient this GM can be because I'm not sure the GM's going to be there. So it's going to be interesting in the offseason what they do. But I think there will be significant movement like in the offseason with this team. I think either Sanheim or Pro is going to go because this team needs more offense without question. And I know that Cam's been hurt and Couturier, who knows with him. But when you look at this team, it sees, okay, offense. Right? And because if you look at the defense, I think they've given up 10 less goals than Detroit, and they've played 3 more games. It's not that horrific. Like, it's not great, but I think that with this team, I look at offense and how you're going to add to this team offensively in the offseason.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned Sanheim as a potential. I mean, not like they're shopping him, but, either Sanheim or Provorov could get moved, and Sanheim's 8-year contract kicks in next year. I mean, we've seen guys like, I'm thinking back, and, I think some of us still have PTSD. We're thinking back to, the Richards and Carter trade. And those guys had just signed deals and were moved before each of them kicked in, so I don't think it's unfathomable that they moved Travis Sanheim. I just think Flyers fans right now don't have much faith that the GM can make a move like that. So it's when we hear, oh, maybe they could move Sanheim. It's like, how are they going to do that with Chuck? Like, we'll get excited for a potential move, and it's like, wait, Chuck Fletcher's the GM, and I'm sure he's a great guy. Like, this is not me talking crap on Chuck Fletcher, but the way things have gone here the last couple of years, it's fans are pretty bummed out for good reason. I think
it's about results, James. I mean, you got a right to rip the guy. Like, the team hasn't produced, and now you got to look. The longest, like the coach has a longer contract than the GM right now, so you wonder what's going on. I think Tortor's a fit. I think he'll get guys committed. Like, he'll bench some guys. He'll scratch some guys. He'll give 30-second press conferences. But he's going to determine who really wants to play hard for this team. And once you determine who's going to play hard for this team as part of the core, then you add to this team. So, but you're right about to criticize Chuck Fletcher because the expectations, and I'm from Central Jersey. I know way back in the day, I actually witnessed the Flyers winning a cup, right? I know how high the expectations are, and it's been a very long time. And the fans deserve better. And the letter writing aside, you got to put players on the team. It's great to write letters, and I think that they look what the Rangers did, and of course the Rangers lucked into Capwell and Lafreniere with respect to the lottery. But you got to start putting legitimate players on this team that make this team better. And how do you do that? You can do it through free agency. You can do it through trades. I think the strength they have is certainly more on the blue line than up front. So and you're right. Like, maybe you don't trade a guy in the 8th year, but look. We put it out the 4th period. Like, Calgary's thinking about changing Mackenzie Weegar, and he was a big part of that trade between Florida and Calgary. So 8-year deals, depends. It depends what the return is. I wouldn't preclude it, but of course, they've talked about Sanheim here in Los Angeles. Pro would be an absolute fit if they don't go get Chychrun, which I think Chychrun's going to get traded in 2035 at this point. So, but I think those are off-season deals. They're not in-season deals for like the significant deals the Flyers got to make. You could sell off a JVR, maybe a Sealer or a Braun. The big deals, the big moves are going to be season, the question is who's going to be there to make those deals.
It's interesting you bring up Provorov, because I think when we had you on last year, I think Provorov was a name that came up with potential tie to Los Angeles. It was either Provorov or Konechny, but we had heard, I don't know if it was last year or the year before now. I mean, Travis can tell me, but we had heard that he had a desire to go to a team out west. It wasn't specifically Los Angeles, but not too far away from Los Angeles, right, Trav?
I heard specifically Los Angeles and Vegas.
Okay. So, I mean, I think
and St. Louis.
There is a fit there for Provorov. In your opinion, though, Dennis, would that be more of would Provorov be more of an off-season move, or do you think that can go down potentially at the trade deadline?
I think that well, if you're going to take players off the Kings roster for a Provorov move, let's see, and it's going to be some forwards. Let's see, it would be Alex Iacovone. Spoke to Rob Blake last week. They had the state of the franchise. He said, we like our forwards. We're not moving Buddy off the team. So if you just want futures for Pro right now, that deal could be made, right? Cap issues aside, and that's the challenge. Pro's at 6. Every team is up against the cap, and any contending team. How are they going to make that fit? Like by not taking a Matt Roy or a Iafallo off the team. That's an off-season deal. So again, he has term. So James, I don't see it like in the moment in the next week or so. I don't see Pro going to LA. That would be a shocker for me. It would be more the Chychrun move because that's been talked about forever. He requested the trade at the beginning of the season. They're trying to accommodate it, but Bill Armstrong is holding the line big time. That's why this trade hasn't been made. That's why he hasn't moved. So I think that, and the thing with Rob is Blake here in LA. He is, if he's not the most patient GM in the league, he's the second most patient. And the team is in a battle for first place in the division with subpar goaltending behind Copley, with a defense that isn't the greatest, that doesn't have a lot of size. So he can afford to look. If they lost between now and the trade deadline every game, the next 4 or 5 games, where you had to say, oh, maybe I should make a move. But right now, again, he's been so patient, and I think the type of deal he wants to make is for future, just for a player like Pro, which the Flyers are probably welcome. And there'd be multiples, right? Probably a first-round pick as well. So I think it benefits the Kings not to make the deal, not to pull the trigger. And again, this organization has not been aggressive in season, so I don't think it would happen in the next 7 to 9 days.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I guess I was going to ask a follow-up for that. Like, how do you perceive a player like Ivan Provorov? Because I know in Philadelphia, he's a player that we were all very excited for. Still a very, very solid hockey player, but I'm not sure that he ever grew into the expectations that we had for him since he was drafted. How is he viewed, out west?
Well, the great thing, if you're talking about Los Angeles specific, like on some teams, he'd be a 1, right? A first pair. But in LA, he doesn't have to be a first pair because Mikey Anderson has really blossomed here.
Oh, yeah.
He just got an 8-year extension at $4 million, which is great value because the kid doesn't prove a lot of offense. But him and Drew are partners, right? So you could put Pro to 3. You tell me Ivan Pro isn't a damn good 3 in this league? Yeah, he is. And I think that's it. The expectation was Pro, hey, he's great. He's going to do all this stuff. He's a top 10 defenseman. Well, he's not. But on a championship team, top 4, yeah, he makes a lot of sense. I think any contending team, if you have a top pair set, to put this guy in as a 3, you got the makings of a really good defense. And that's what, so you could put him with, like, if it came to Los Angeles and put him with Jersey, who's been playing the left side, trying hard, but he's really a right-handed defenseman. Put him with a guy like Jersey who goes up the ice. That would be really, really good pairing. Or a kid like Brant Clark comes in, you put him with a veteran like Pro. There's a lot of reasons why they've been chasing Chychrun, but also Provorov, I think, is certainly, a fit here without question. But it depends where he slots on your depth chart, right? If you think he's a 1, is he really a 1? With a better team around him, maybe, but without question, he could be a great 3, and I think that's what the contending teams look at. Now, it might reduce the return, saying, okay, this is not a number 1 defense. This is not Roman Josi. It's not Cale Makar. And it's not, right? But certainly this is a guy who's going to log a lot of minutes, play tough defense. He's a no-brainer for a fit here. But again, I think everything is a question of acquisition cost at this point.
I was curious about, you mentioned him earlier, the whole Jakob Chychrun situation. Is this, like, I thought he was going to be traded a week or two ago. What's going on there?
Well, look, here's the thing. There's no law in the CBA about healthy scratching a player for whatever reason. Now, he was practicing on his own. Now he's practicing with the team. Bill Armstrong has been a very tough negotiator. And the way I heard it, there might have been a deal struck, and then Bill went back to the table and said, I want one more asset. And they're like, okay, we're not going to have it. Look, they have the luxury of time in Arizona. It's a bad team playing in a 5,000-seat arena. They're not contending anytime soon. So if he wants to hold out for his max value, fine. But here's the challenge, Jack, though, is that if you wait till the offseason, now you only got 2 postseason runs with this guy. So you might want to hold out for that last asset, but it's going to come back to you if you don't pull the trigger now, because now the team's going to say, okay, we only got him for 2 runs, and he's going to be in his walk year next year. So there's a fine line that they're trying to walk in Arizona. I get it. Like, with a guy with term, you want to total on and be hard about it, fine. But people say, oh, the PA should get involved. No, you can help the scratch a player. Like, it's not fair to the player, although the player, again, early in the season wanted to be moved. So this is the consequence of wanting to be moved and having term on your contract. Your GM has to wait until he gets the asking price. Does it happen to be fair to the player, to end the drama? That's fine. The issue is, you can have drama around the Coyotes because it's not like they're going for a division title for the playoffs. So it's not a distraction. It's a distraction from a game-to-game situation. It's not distracting them from a playoff run. So that's the situation with Chychrun. Is it imminent? I don't think so, because now he's practicing with the team, which says he's trending towards playing again, which is fine. I have no problem with it. It's really interesting. I haven't seen the situation. Look, I'm like you. I was pulling up the Staples Center, 10 days ago on Saturday night for the Dustin Brown tribute. And that Arizona Coyotes PR tweet came out about trade-related reasons. And like you, I thought, okay, something's going to happen by Monday, right? And the Kings are going to trade for him. They're not going to trade for him on Dustin Brown night. The next night was Super Bowl. So what's going to happen then? But I would thought that within 72 hours, the guy will be gone. And it just hasn't happened. So it's – I don't want to bang on the Coyotes too much, but it's typical Coyotes at this point with respect to pulling a guy on a lot of trade-related reasons, and you don't want him trading.
Do you think the Kings are the front runners?
They've been the front runners, and if the Bruins go get Gavrikov, they're out of the mix. So I don't really see the other team, maybe Edmonton, but they're so jammed up against the cap. They certainly have had the most interest, and I would have thought it would happen over the summer. See, the Coyotes really like Gabe Vilardi, and so if they had made that trade in the offseason, that could have worked. But now Gabe, I think, is the second or third highest goal scorer on the team. He's really emerged this year as a dangerous goal scorer. So now he's off the table. Quentin Byfield, they're not trading, even though Quentin really needs to step up. Brant Clark, they've said publicly, we are not trading him. So it's a question of what pieces can you, like, and Alex Turcotte was a 5th overall pick, but he's hurt again. Mm-hmm. Like, is it a Jordan Spence who can play in the street right now as a right defenseman? So first-round pick. Who else can you put in the mix? So the Kings have the assets to do it. It's the right mix of assets at this point in time. But to answer your question, they're certainly front runners because I think Boston has now gravitated towards Gavrikov. And if you put Gavrikov with Charlie McAvoy, that's a pretty decent top pair. Although I don't think Boston needs any help right now.
Yeah, I agree. If the Kings miss out on Chychrun, who do you think they could pivot to?
Well, they could pivot to, if Gavrikov doesn't work, he would be a guy. I think Edmondson in Montreal could be an option as well. And the one guy who I think is going to get traded at this point and next by the third is going to be Jake McCabe. That would be another guy to look out for where if Chychrun doesn't happen, it would be a less pricey situation. He would play in our top 4. You would slot him in as on the second pair. He could play you 20 minutes tonight. I think it would be an upgrade for the Kings. So I think McCabe would be a guy that does have some term left that the Kings would be interested in as well. So Edmondson would be more of like a rental, but McCabe would be another option for the Kings on the left side as well.
The Cal extension really hasn't worked, and I'm not sure how much Quick has left. Copley hasn't been bad. He's won him some games, but do you think the Kings are looking for a goalie?
They have 3 healthy goalies. Like, so what are you going to do? You're going to wait Phoenix Copley? He's 17-4-1. And he's about 905 save percentage. He'll get claimed tomorrow. Like, are you going to waive Jonathan Quick, the greatest goaltender in the history of this franchise, who has 2 rings, who has a Conn Smythe? No, and he's on a walk year of his contract. So here's what I think they do. Once they get past the trade deadline, They still believe in Cal Peterson. Now, could they trade Cal for a guy like Demko, who's out of favor in Vancouver? They could, but Demko's hurt. That's not going to help him now. So, Jack, to answer your question, I don't see him trade for Cam Talbot. Just came back, but where you fitting this guy and who are you moving on from? It doesn't make any sense. They believe in Cal Peterson. I think what happens is once the rosters expand, they'll bring Cal back up. His numbers have been solid, and he's been working on his game in the AHL. But as you guys know, goaltending in the AHL is nothing like goaltending in the NHL. And that's the question. Like, so for the Kings have 24 games left. So for the 18 games that Copley doesn't play, who do you trust? It's a who do you trust situation right now. Right now, it's not good. I mean, Quick got a win the other night, the first win since December 1st, only because Copley got thrown out of that game in Anaheim, right, for giving the guys the business with his blocker, right? So I think the situation, here's the thing with the Kings, there's two needs. Lefty, goaltending. Lefty you can fix right now. You could with a trade. You're not going to fix the goaltending because you have three healthy goaltenders. You're not going to add a fourth to mix. And is this team, here's the thing. You worry about this team, like, could they win the division? Yeah, I think they're 3 points behind Vegas. They have one more game to play against Vegas. Could they get out of the division? They could, because everybody's about the same. But are they a legitimate Stanley Cup contender? Are they Tampa or Boston or Carolina or the Rangers? Not yet. So to make that one big move, if they had a bad streak here before the deadline and the goaltending went to crap, fine. But Copley played fine last night. They lost a 2-1 game. I just don't see it happening. I know yes, they need goaltending. They need goaltending in the offseason. I think they ride and die with what they have in net with respect to Copley and Quick. And then I see Peterson after the trade deadline.
As a fan of the game, Quick's my favorite goalie of all time, really. Do you think this could possibly be his last season?
From a playing standpoint, yes. But Travis, he's such a prideful guy. I know this guy. I've covered him his entire career. The question is, does he really want to go out like this? Mm-hmm. Is that it? And if he doesn't play in Los Angeles, I don't think he's in the mix for Los Angeles for next season. Who would really take him on? Who would want to sign him? Like, does he want to play for – like, he's not Jerome. Remember, Jerome McGinley never won a cup. Like, John won 2. Like, he's a low-key guy. He's got a Conn Smythe. What's he playing for? Like, for pride? He's allowed to. This could be it for him. And plus, he just saw Dustin Brown, his buddy, his number being raised to the rafters. Maybe it's time. It's just a situation where John's never really adapted his style of play to this generation of the NHL. Like, it worked in 12 of 2014, but you guys know, a lot faster, a lot more skillful, and it's just not working. Pucks are getting through him that would never get through him before. So it could be the end for him because what's there more to do? Well, maybe the American record for wins, but a team's got to be interested in, well, and you're scouting this guy. Are you really going to recommend him as a number 2? Because right now he's a number 2 for any team, possibly. But I think he's going to do like Brown and say, look, I just want to play for one team in my entire career. I loved it here in LA. I just think this is it. This could be it for him.
All right. Yeah, he's been around for a long time, Jonathan Quick. Won how many cups out in Los Angeles? 2?
2 and a Conn Smythe. So he's been
he's had a hell of a career.
He's been a great player. I mean, he might be the next guy. I know everybody's going crazy with statues in LA for hockey players, but he's probably going to have a statue as well and get his jersey raised to the rafters. He's been he's been a great King for this organization. And that's people say, well, you can make a trade. You'd have to waive him. And you're just not, with 24 games left in possibly his career, Rob Blake is not going to make that move. The fan base would go nuts, and you just can't do it. Look, could he play better? Yeah, way better. But I think you just ride and die with what you have right now.
What are your thoughts on the Dustin Brown statue? It seems like a lot of hockey fans aren't too happy about that.
Yeah, all those fans are outside of L.A. Like he's on the Mount Rushmore. He did something that Wayne Gretzky and Marcel Dion and Luc Robitaille never did. He raised the cup as a King, and he was the captain. He's, I think, the only American to raise it twice, right? So, look, if people outside don't get it, it's okay. Mm-hmm. You don't have to. Fans don't care. It was a great ceremony. It's a long ceremony, but because people, 45 years this franchise was in the wilderness, never won. And I keep going back to when they won in 2012. There was a parade. They televised it. My buddy Jim Fox, who's a great analyst, was on with Patrick O'Neill talking about that right before, and he was driven to tears because when he would go make public appearances, the first question he was asked, well, how come the Kings never won the cup? And on that day, he can now tell people they won the cup. We won in 2012. It was very, very emotional for this franchise because there are people inside and outside the organization that thought they would never see a Stanley Cup win in Los Angeles. That's how much Dustin Brown and that group of players meant to him. So if you don't think he deserves a statue, that's great. No one cares in Los Angeles outside that you don't think so. It for him, for what he meant. Now, it's a big statue. It was really, I didn't realize how big it was. I was out there when they unveiled it, but he deserves it for what he meant to this franchise in that arena. To have the Stanley Cup lifted at Staples Center, I got no problem with it. If somebody has outside of it, then okay, you're allowed, but then you're not a Kings fan.
I completely agree with you. The dude's an absolute legend for that organization. Going back to them Cup teams, I wanted to know what it was like covering Mike Richards and Jeff Carter.
I don't know. They never talked to the media, so
they didn't change much, I guess, when they went out that way, huh?
No, we and especially Carts. We would have we would tweet. Oh, wait a minute! Here's the one day that Jeff Carter is going to be available to the media, right? But look, Dean Lombardi was brilliant. Like he brought guys in that were out of Jeff Carter more of out of it because he was in Columbus. He didn't want to play in Columbus. Dean was never the greatest drafter in the world, Travis. He made great trades. Mm-hmm. He traded Wisniewski for Green and Stahl. And without those two guys, they don't win a championship. Gabrick was always hurt in Columbus. Came to LA and lit up that 2014 team of goals. I mean, his trades were amazing. So Carter and Richards were when you talk to them, they were fine. You just never talked to them, and the organization shielded them from the media. So, but they're part of a reason to get these guys won cups. They were brilliant moves. I didn't like the Jeff Carter trade. I still get people still retweet from me from 12 years ago of when that trade was. Because the guy was a dog in Columbus. I watched him play. I'm like, wow, this guy really doesn't care. But he came in and he scored goals, and it just worked. That group of players were fantastic. Remember, they went 16-4 in 2012, and they really walked through teams. But it was – and they're decent guys. Like you see him, pass through the hallway, Carter with his family and stuff like that. They were decent guys. They just didn't like speaking to the media, so it was hard to get a measure on these guys. But when they went out there, they gave them all – I mean, look, I know Dean has misgivings about what happened at the end with Mike Richards, but that was the guy that signaled, like, we are serious. We want to try to win cups here, and we need a player like Mike Richards to come in and help lead us towards a championship. And that's what Darryl Sutter always said. He had 6 or 7 captains. He didn't just have one captain in Dustin Brown, which might have slighted Dustin, but Darryl slighted Dustin all the time. But that was I think that was the benchmark with respect to this franchise being serious about winning cups when they brought in Richards and then subsequently Jeff Carter.
That's so amazing because for you guys, it signaled the benchmark that, hey, we're serious about winning cups. And I think for the Flyers, things have never really been close to those times with those players on the roster. Things have kind of taken a turn for in the opposite direction. I don't want to say for the worse, because they had some good years with Briere and Giroux and Simmons and Voracek and Schenn. But I think, and I'm speaking solely for myself, Mike Richards, ultimate Flyer, right? And you trade a guy like that. What does that kind of say? And Wayne Simmons was great here, fan favorite for a long, long time. Braden Schenn, loved the way he played. But it felt like you kind of ripped the soul out of the Flyers and traded them away. What was the vibe like in LA when they acquired a guy like Mike Richards?
That guy was a winner. He would do anything he could to win you a championship, and he did it at the lower levels. Didn't do it in Philadelphia, but that's the type of leader that you needed, because it was still a relatively young team, number one, and they didn't have a lot of playoff success. This was a guy that was going to do anything. And look, at the end, he was playing third and fourth line. Didn't matter. Like, you needed to go those guys in the room. And that's why Dean didn't go after, way back in the day, a guy like Kovalchuk, because there were some questions about his character, but there was no questions about Mike Richards' character in the room. Like, he was going to do whatever it took to win. So that was that. And then, like I said, I'm like, okay, this team is getting close. They're getting serious. And that's the type of move that you make. And look, it's a trade that they had to make because, they gave up something for the guy. But it wasn't like he was out of favor in Philadelphia. It's just like sometimes the belief system's gone with respect to an organization, and it departed with those two guys. And they came here and they wound up winning championships. It wasn't them alone, right? They weren't like they still had Dustin Brown and Kopitar and Drew Doughty and Quick. But to add those guys to the mix of a talented core, that's what you needed. You needed another sniper like Carter was, and you needed a heart and soul guy like Mike Richards.
Absolutely. All right. So let's kind of switch gears here. We're going to just keep you for a couple more minutes here. Why don't we wrap up with some Flyers Talk TV? And,
Sure.
From the inside, fans are kind of clamoring or clashing. We want direction. And to some of us, hiring John Tortorella signaled some sort of a direction. Maybe some of us are talking ourselves into that, or because some fans don't generally believe that the hiring of Tortorella provides direction. So, there's still some going back and forth amongst fans and whatnot. From sort of the outside, I mean, you're always on the inside because you're a cool guy, but from sort of the outside looking in, do the Flyers have a direction in your opinion? What does it look like to you?
Okay, so the season before Torts was here, did that team have anything?
No.
Nothing. I watched I'm here at 4:00 watching East Coast games.
They were brutal, man.
So you don't think you had direction, but you got short memories. Because I watched that team that would go down 2-0 5 minutes into the game. I'm like, all right, that game's over. Like, if this team goes down 2-0 in the first 5 minutes, the game isn't over. Like, the commitment's there. You got to play hard for this guy. You get benched, and it doesn't matter. Like he said, he's not sending signals just to Kevin Hayes when he sat him out early in the season. He's the rest of the team. You got to play hard. You got to commit to playing defense. There's certainly more structure to their game. Are they some shut-down defensive team? No. You watched the Edmonton game last night. Okay, you're not going to shut those guys down. But I think there is direction, James. It's a question of, like, when they get more high-profile players, will they toe the line with what Tortorella wants? And that's the question. Like, the really talented players. I'll give you an example. Would Torts work in New York right now with Zibanejad and with Panarin and the real skill guys? I don't think so. So for a less talented team, you could put that core in and maybe trickle up once you establish more structure on this team and you get better players. So I like the guy. I covered him way back in the day in Tampa for half a season right before they won the Cup. This team was so bad. It had no direction and no structure on the ice last season. Of course it's an improvement. You can't tell me that they're not in games. I saw him play here in L.A. on New Year's Eve. Oh, guaranteed win. They went up winning the game. And they've played tough. Look, they've had a bad stretch here. But they're not getting out-competed. And last year they got out-competed. So, yes. Now, is he the guy to take them to a championship? I don't know that. And that's the question. I think that's what fans should be asking. Is he the guy to reestablish structure and get buy-in to players and get the team play hard? And you know what? I've been at Wells Fargo. I was at the Spectrum back in the day. The Philly fans deserve effort, right? And at least you're getting it this year. You're not getting the results you want, but you're getting effort like you didn't get under Yo and before that. So I don't know. So it's right to question the direction. I get it. But maybe this is just a guy who's a way station and say, okay, we need certain structure in this organization. We're going to get it, but maybe the next guy can take us to a championship level. So for right now in the moment, I think he's the right guy. Do I think he'll last 4 years? No, I wouldn't make that bet right now.
That's interesting that you said that because I posed a question earlier this season. If the Flyers don't win a Stanley Cup under John Tortorella, but they win one with the next coach, was John Tortorella a success in Philadelphia? And for all the reasons that you just said, because they were so far the other way, in the negative way, that they needed to bring in a guy like Torts to get things just back on the rails, you know?
Yeah.
And so if he's able just to do that and have this team back where they should be, competing in the playoffs year in and year out by, I don't know, year 3 and 4 of Torts, if the next guy wins them a cup, you know, in his first or second year, you know, does that mean Tortorella was successful here? In my opinion, yes. And I thought it was a good conversation question to ask.
Yeah, they were a brutal watch last year, and I think the Philly fans don't show up because this team doesn't care. There's no commitment there. And I'll give you the parallel. Look what happened in Los Angeles. Terry Murray was here, and he put in structure about defending home plate and stuff like that. He wasn't good enough to put this team over. Darryl Sutter was. So if you're a Flyers fan, you hope that Torts put in some structure, and maybe it's the next guy because again, it's a different generation of players, and the guys like Torts and the hardcore, like Darryl Sutter's struggling in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
There's some talk of him. If they didn't win a couple of weeks ago against Buffalo on the road, maybe he would be gone. Wow. So that type of coach isn't really working anymore, right? So, but again, it was so bad last year. I like the hire for what this team needed in the moment, presently. I don't know if he's the guy to put you over, but again, you got to start somewhere. And it's an improvement over way improved. I watch, at least when I tune into the Flyers games, on NBC Sports Philly, I know I'm going to see a competitive game most nights. Like the other nights, I was done 10 minutes in. I'm like, wow, this team really doesn't commit to doing anything or playing any defense. So that's how I look at it at this point.
Absolutely. And we could ask you all kinds of questions for why a team would play like that, and why would a group of guys need a coach like John Tortorella? How does that happen? How does that get to that point where you need the only way to fix what you have going on is to bring in a guy like John Tortorella? How does that happen? Do you have any idea how that could happen? I mean, you're talking about a locker room with, had guys like Jake Voracek, guys like Claude Giroux, guys like Wayne Simmons in the past. Is it because of the players? Or is it because of the business side of things? How does that happen?
I think it was the previous coach, Mike Yeo. Really, he's had some success in short, but he can't come in and throw a Stanley Cup ring on the table, right? And he doesn't have guys vouch for him, right? So it's as simple as that. He's a better coach, James. I don't think there's any question. He's a better coach than Mike Yeo. And so there's more respect for this player. And they know it. And guys talk. They know the reputation of John Tortorella. Okay, if it was a country club time is over. And you saw it. Guys getting healthy scratched. Guys getting called out in the media. 30-second press conference because he wasn't happy with it. You knew what was coming, right? So guys say, okay, party time's over. We had a good time for a couple of seasons. The team released up, but now we have to concentrate on really trying hard again and putting more effort in. I think that's what you're looking at. I think he's just a better coach, and he's more demanding, and it's time. I think players know. When you watch that team play last year, you know they were done. Mm-hmm. It's what this, again, in the moment, it's what this team needed. Again, to win a championship, we're having a different conversation.
Totally agree. And we're coming towards the end of your time here. Jack, Trav, you have any last questions for Mr. Bernstein before we let DB go?
I don't, but thank you for joining us.
DB, I just got one because I haven't spoken yet, so I figured I'll throw it out there. When you look, everything you said about the coaching makes perfect sense. I totally understand where they're going. When you look at their cap situation, I mean, just some of these contracts that they're signed to for so long, and you don't even know if these players are going to play. How badly does that impact them doing that transformation into a championship caliber team, or at least a contender that they can add to when they're completely anchored down by their cap situation?
Yeah. And Jack, you bring up a great point. I'll give you a parallel. Look at Vancouver. Vancouver's issues aren't JT Miller or trading Bo Horvat or Demko. It's Connor Garland at $4.9 million. It's Mikheyev at $4.7 million. That's what kills you. The mid-level players at that money, you can't make moves. So what does that tell you? That tells you that, okay, maybe you got to trade a Provorov or a Sanhan to get the right mix of players. It's major surgery here because he's the worst thing in the world. Being 9th or 10th in the conference. You either got to suck or be real good. And that's the challenge with Philly is that they're not that far away from the 9th and 10th. You look at the standings, but I don't know how you do it, Jack. That's the question. I don't. Maybe you need a different GM. Maybe you need to buy out some players. I don't know what to do with Couturier. Does he retire because he's LTIR? It's major surgery here because this team does need help, especially. And I'll say one thing: good on Owen Tippett. Love the way he's coming in and score some goals. But to get to Boston or Tampa or Toronto, you're right. Like you're gonna have to make some great trades and win some big trades. So you're right, and again, that's the problem of being stuck like in the middle here. They're not Arizona or Chicago, and maybe that's not the best place to be at this point in time. So I don't have an answer for you other than saying, okay, maybe you're more valuable players like a Farabee. Like, I mean, what do you do with that contract? It's not tradable. I get it. Like maybe it takes a different. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. But you're right. That's the one concern I would have is that there isn't a lot of flexibility, maneuverability, because the players you would like to trade off this team, you can't.
Beautiful. I think you just echoed everything I've been saying for the last month and a half.
Yeah,
exactly
it's
what we
major
were hoping to
surgery,
hear.
Jack.
Yeah,
It's
I love
major
it.
surgery.
It keeps me up at night because I'm like, where's the light at the end of this tunnel, man? It's not for a long time.
Yep, for sure.
Well, DB, it was a pleasure having you on again. Thank you for joining us. Where can our listeners find your work, and where can they, watch you or listen to you?
Where can't they find?
Yeah, for real. You're all over the place.
TheFourthPeriod.com. My Twitter account is Dennis TFP. I'm on SiriusXM, The Hot Stove, on Saturdays from 11 to 1 Eastern. I pop on the Power Play once in a while. We're doing some great video work now with the Hammer Betting Network. We actually do picks once in a while and stuff like that. So I think if you go to my Twitter account, Dennis TFP, I think from there you'll be able to sniff out where all the content is. And especially coming up with the March 3rd trade deadline, we'll be very, very active online with respect to news and takes about what might happen over the next couple of days.
All right, well, Dennis, thank you very much. We love you, and we're looking forward to the trade deadlines and probably, watching the LA Kings in the playoffs, since we won't be watching the Flyers, at least for this season. So good luck out there and continue the great work, and, good luck going forward.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate being on.